A new computer.
This is a presentation of Northeast Streaming Sports.
If you like the sweet science, get ready to talk boxing on the Gloved Fist podcast with top boxing writers Frank Latirzo and Jack Hirsch. Frank, a former amateur boxer out of Philadelphia, writes for NY Fights and can be seen on the Boxing Channel. Jack, an amateur boxer who competed in the New York Golden Gloves, was a 6-term president of the Boxing Writers Association. And now, here's Frank Latirzo and Jack Hirsch.
And we're back. Welcome to Glove Fist. My name is Frank Latirzo, former writer, full-time observer, joined by Jack Hirsch, former 6-term president of the Boxing Writers Association of America. Jack, I got to celebrate. Had a triple play the other night. Phillies were eliminated. Eagles lost to the Giants, and the Flyers lost their opener.
Yeah, but Frank, you were arguing with me on the show that the Phillies were going to beat the Dodgers, and I said, no,
I thought they were.
No, the Dodgers are winning the World Series. Case closed. And
I don't care who wins it. I just know that Philly can't. That's all I care about. Sorry, Joe, if you're watching, Joe Bergman, because Joe Bergman knows how I feel about the Philly teams. But anyhow, there was a fight this weekend, and it was in Philadelphia. And the best fighter, the best young fighter under 30, and I think he's on his way to perhaps being the next Bud Crawford. His name is Jaron Boots Ennis, fought his debut fight at 154 against a guy who was 14-1 named Lima. I can't say his first name, so I'm not even going to go into that. He beat him in a minute and 58 seconds. Jack, there's not much you can say when you see a fight that goes a minute and 58 seconds. All I can say is this. Boots is who I thought he was. Lima, in the 2 minutes I saw him, looked like he was at least competent, but he just ran into a guy who's on a different level. And when you have a great offensive fighter like Boots, when you match him up against a second-tier guy, it usually doesn't last long.
Yeah, Frank, there's a comment on the screen, but there's sound. I hear Frank clearly, and I assume, Frank, you hear me clearly as well.
Yes.
Yeah, it was a mismatch. Let's not get around it. Boots taking out Lima in one round. Boots looked great. I'm high on Boots the way you are. Don't get me wrong, but I'm not going to be singing the praises, going crazy, saying Boots looks sensational, because he looks sensational. It's all relative to who you're going against. But I will say this, and this is food for thought, Frank, and this works in Boots' favor. The next 4 years, I'm just giving a total 4 years, okay?
Okay, it's 28.
That's a lengthy amount of time. Take the elite unbeaten fighters on the world scene. Usyk, okay? Terence Crawford, Shedeur Stevenson, and Boots. Who is the most likely, who's the most likely to remain unbeaten over the 4-year period? The one most unlikely, not talking about retiring, if they all continue to fight.
Okay, Jack, but that's kind of a hard question because I don't think that Crawford is going to fight more than once or twice, and I think that's the same with Usyk. So I think there's a great chance they will finish undefeated. So it basically comes down to Boots.
But if they do fight for the 4 years, that's what I'm talking about, Frank, not retiring. I think Boots is the fighter most likely to remain unbeaten, because if you look at the age factor with Usyk and Crawford, and something about Shedeur Stevenson, he's bound to wind up in a Pernell Whitaker type controversial decision situation. It happened with Whitaker. I could see it happening with Stevenson against someone where you're going to think, well, he won the fight, but the other guy got the decision.
Okay, so Jack, then it comes down to Boots and Stevenson because of the fact that Crawford and Usyk are 38, so there's a better chance they could slip up. So I'm going to say that it's probably Boots of those four has the best chance to remain undefeated for the next 4 years.
But what is going to happen if Crawford is fighting the once a year? They're going to get him the right opponents. It's not going to be a mega fight like Canelo until he faces Boots. That would be his next mega fight. It might be 3 years from now. And at that point, Boots would have put on a little weight. And maybe it's at the catch weight. And I don't think the public would even care about what title was on the line. They could meet at 164 pounds at the time, 3 years from now, whatever the weight is. So I think that's going to be a mega fight down the line, Boots and Terence Crawford, unless Crawford retires. But Crawford will not be able to retire in peace if Boots is on the verge of fighting him. He can't bail out at that point. He's going to have to fight him. Now Crawford could ride into the sunset, and absolutely no one could accuse him of ducking Boots.
I disagree completely. I think Crawford could retire tomorrow and have it. There's no controversy at all about it.
I agree tomorrow, but 3 years from now, if Boots is knocking over opponent after opponent and Crawford was still active, Crawford can't then suddenly say, okay, I've had enough. I got nothing
Jack,
more
he'll be
to do."
41. He'll be 41.
I'm aware of it, but they're fighting into advanced stages if he's still active.
So-
Frank, no one accuses Rocky Marciano of ducking anyone, and I'm going to tell you why. Because Floyd Patterson was 1 year away from being a viable heavyweight contender, and then he won the vacant title of Archie Moore, But had Floyd Patterson been fully developed, or Sonny Liston, that's a better example. Had Sonny Liston come along a few years earlier and he was in peak form at the time Marciano retired, we'd be mentioning that now, that Marciano, good thing he didn't fight Liston. We think that's why he retired and so on.
Jack, you can always mention it and fans will always do that. I just don't think it'll carry a lot of weight because when Boots is 31 and Crawford's 41, there's nobody I don't think that would pick Crawford to win. In fact, I actually think today, this minute, Boots may be the toughest fight for him out there as it is at any weight.
Oh, he is the toughest fight. No, because Boots has great offensive skills. If they fought now, hypothetically, Boots is at 154. Boots can comfortably fight at 158, 159, and he wouldn't be sacrificing a thing at that weight, not a thing. And as we both know, Crawford could come down in weight to 160 in all probability without hurting himself, because the 168, it was an artificial weight, but he wasn't but we understand he was fighting in a higher weight class. He was just a junior middleweight. If they fought now, let me ask you, who wins if they fought now at a catch weight?
Bud, no doubt. And I love Boots, no doubt. Bud wins, but that window is closing. I'm not sure how long it'll take to close. Maybe it's a year, maybe a year and a half, but it is closing. And the longer they wait, the more it favors Boots because he's the younger guy and that's the way it works. But Jack, I don't see them fighting. I don't think they're ever going to fight for the fact that the risk reward is not there on Bud's part. And if I'm managing Boots, I'm not going to chase that fight right now. And there's so many things out there I can get.
But Boots was chasing it last year. He was chasing a fight with Terence Crawford. And now that he's fighting for Eddie Hearn's Matchroom Boxing, they're not talking about Crawford because Hearn wants to get him all these fights. And also, I think Hearn is aware if they took a risk and fought Crawford now and lost, they might never recover from it.
Exactly.
I mean, legacy-wise.
But Jack, here's the thing that I don't know if cracks me up is the right word, but I saw a lot of, I'm not going to say visceral hate, but we just live in an era where no matter who a fighter fights, it makes no difference. Now imagine this. All I read this week was Boots should have fought Ortiz, maybe Fondora, maybe even Xander Zayas. Imagine if Boots in his first fight at 154 gets a title shot. They'll say he's being protected and he's being spoon-fed and he's getting a gift. The fight the other night was his first fight. So basically there are only two guys.
Middleweight, you mean?
Right, at junior middleweight. Jack, there are only two guys that Boots could have fought last Saturday night and beat and gotten credit. And that would be Ortiz or Fondora. And then even if he would have fought those guys and beat them, Jack, we'll hear Fondora was knocked out by one punch and Ortiz had a hard time with Madrimov and Boziak, however you say his name, that he didn't look good in that fight and it was close. I just think you can't please the fans today. And there are only how many outstanding guys are there at the elite level for Crawford to fight, for Usyk to fight, or for any of these guys to fight? No matter who they fight, the hate squad will have something to say and they'll discredit it.
Frank, but Lima was a known name. At this point of Boots' career, he's been around a long time. Beating a guy like Lima, I just can't get overly excited about. He looked great, Boots, by the way. He looked sensational. I'm going to give him that. But I can't get overly excited about the result. But that's fine. Let's see about his next fight.
Should he have gotten a title shot, Jack, in his first fight at 154?
His first fight won. What is the difference? He should have fought Virgil Ortiz. Virgil Ortiz had challenged him, was chasing him, and for some reason, Boots was quiet for a while. Now he's with Eddie Hearn. He needs a big fight, Boots, now. They can't keep giving him fights the way he had last Saturday. He's going to fight Virgil Ortiz, and you want to know something? He's going to win that fight big. He's going to win it decisively.
Thank you.
I don't mean he's going to win a decision 116, 112. I'm not talking about a
No, he's going to stop him.
He's going to stop him. He's going to make a statement. It might take a while. It might go into the late rounds, 10, 11 rounds. But Boots is at some point in the fight, maybe not the early rounds, is going to assert himself and win, without any room to doubt. And people are going to be raving about Boots after the fight. And no one is going to put down the victory over Virgil Ortiz when he, gets it.
I will say this, Jack, in that fight the other night, it was one-sided, but Boots did eat a left hand. And for a second there, he was a little bit stunned. Now, 5 seconds later, Lima was on the canvas, but Boots can be hit. And that will open the path for other guys when they do fight him, guys that have some offensive skills, which wasn't the case Saturday night. But, Jack, as far as Boots goes, there's nothing not to like. I mean, we always say, well, who do you fight? Who do you fight? But you know what? Who do you want him to fight? It's like, it's not so easy getting wins in this sport as it is, as people think, at the top level.
You mentioned something very interesting, because you look for red flags even in great fighters, okay? What might be a weakness, what might not? There's no evidence of Boots having any weaknesses. We've seen him get hit in past fights, maybe with a few more punches than he should have. But I think that's easily correctable for a guy like Boots. You go in the gym, you make the adjustments. But if he was really stunned by a punch, really hurt, and his punch resistance is average, and no one has been able to test him in that regard, it's something to think about when he gets hit. But of course, you posted an article that we laughed at on social media about Muhammad Ali, who was Cassius Clay at the time. And what did it say? What happens if the kid gets hit? What might happen is his ability to
right. But if he has a chin, he'll be special.
Right. And look, his durability turned out to be off the charts.
But Jack, the thing that some people, and Joe mentioned it now, like Sugar Ray Leonard got hit, offensive guys that try to take your head off, like Boots, like Bud, like Leonard, like Robinson, they do get hit. And that could be an issue. Now, I don't think Boots' chin is going to be a problem, but look, Anybody can be hurt and anybody can be knocked out. So it is something, maybe if you want to keep your eye on it, because he does get hit. He gets hit a little bit more than Bud did at the same stage of his career, but I think he might be a little better than Bud offensively at the same stage of his career.
He might be better offensively than Bud right now. He throws more punches that come from every
I'm not going to
angle.
dispute that, Jack.
But Bud is a great ring general. The way he sizes an opponent up, he has a tremendous mindset, a tremendous focus. He knows exactly how he's going to take someone apart before knocking them out.
And he's strong and he has a chin. And he should look, he checks all the boxes. He's the best fighter in boxing. I think there's a chance though, Jack, in 4 or 5 years, maybe sooner, we'll be talking about Boots in the same vein.
We might be, but we talk about the best fighter pound for pound in boxing, and you'll agree with me on this. Oftentimes the selection comes on the guy who fought last.
Who fought last and looked good against a big guy, right? A big name.
Arum, of course, Bob Arum is saying it's Inoue, Naoya Inoue, the Japanese fighter, but he promotes him. So he's going to say that. And when he promoted Manny Pacquiao, he said, Manny Pacquiao is the greatest fight I ever saw. He promotes him. If he wasn't promoting Manny Pacquiao wouldn't have been the greatest fight he ever saw, even though Manny is an all-time great. But you take a guy like an Alexander Usyk, are we dismissing him pound for pound? Should he have lost his place on the pound for pound thing? What was a great accomplishment? I'm not sure the answer. Crawford beating Canelo or Usyk, really a smaller guy beating Tyson Fury?
I don't think that's close, Jack, because Tyson Fury, before he fought Usyk, barely beat a novice. And I think Tyson Fury has been on the decline and eroding for years, at least since the third Wilder fight. I think what Crawford did is much more impressive. And even though you can say Usyk is a small heavyweight, but Jack, we both know if you're 220 pounds or 225 pounds, you are big enough to beat anybody. And let's face it, Fury carries weight he doesn't need to carry.
Okay, fair enough there, but
and Usyk should remain in the top tier pound for pound, either 2 or 3. I have no problem with that. He has a great resume.
Part of the problem that Boots is going to face, that Crawford is no longer facing at all, he's not a cash cow yet, Boots. It's going to be hard for him to find opponents because there's much greater risk than there's reward. Now, Crawford, by beating Canelo, entered the Canelo territory. Even if you get stopped by Crawford now, you're bound to be in for big payday. Because let's be honest about it, Frank. If Crawford is fighting, it's party time. Company comes over, they're going to start watching him fight. It's an event, the Crawford fight.
He's entered that level, yes.
That level, and Boots is just a boxer still. That's all. No one on the street's going to say they heard of Boots Ennis, but some people, at least the average sports fan, the average sports fan knows who Terence Crawford is. The average
But Jack, why is that?
Does not know who Boots Ennis is.
Why is that though? Because he's had
Canelo. He entered the
and he had the high profile fight with Spence. So he's had 2 high profile fights. What did I post a couple beginning of last week? That is part of the problem with boxing today. It's the hardest sport to find and to see. So it's like we see all these names, and a lot of times I've said to you, I haven't seen the guy. I see his record. I've seen clips of him, but I haven't seen him because the avenue to watch those guys, it's hard. You need to have this stream, 5 passwords, and for guys of our age. Now, look, you're lucky. You have grandkids that can go through this in 10 seconds. I don't have grandkids or kids, so it's like I have to bother my friends or their kids and have them come over to the house and show me how to do it, and then they get frustrated because I can't pick it up.
It's a funny thing a while ago, and this is off the air. We were on the phone, You were trying to get a pay-per-view show when they had eight great fights, His Excellency, and you were practically cursing like they don't want to take your money. You want to buy the darn thing, and you're
Exactly.
not able to access it.
Yes.
They make it so complicated at times. You
So,
just wanna
Jack, think of
access
this.
the darn thing.
Jack, think of this. Back in the 80s and 90s, we saw Boza Edwards fight on the weekend. We saw a Guayo fight. We saw Saad Muhammad fight. We saw Mancini. And we took an interest in them. And even the guys that are not like us, that are hardcore fans, knew who they were. Back then, when I would go out on Saturday nights after a fight on Saturday afternoon, I go, hey, you see Aguero today? Hey, what did you see Saad against Jerry Martin?
Yeah.
Did you see Boza and Bazooka? It's like they knew about him. Where now it's like, how many people saw Boots the other night? Hardly anybody. And there, if the sport had exposure, they could build the fan bases where people would want to see these guys.
Oh, I'm going to tell you, I saw the replay the next morning because the fights end very late. And there's so much sports going on. And I do.
Well, the Boots fight ended early, Jack.
Right, yeah. But you know what?
But that's a rarity. That's a rarity.
You see things on tape delay, not knowing what happened. So I went to sleep, got up, saw the replay the next morning. It went obviously very quick, one round. And listen, Boots is going to be a big name play. You know who's fighting this weekend, and this is slipped completely under the radar. You talk about Philadelphia, Danny Garcia.
I know.
He's fighting at the Barclays Center. And it's a show not to get excited about. He's fighting the main event, a fighter named Daniel Gonzalez, who is very average. So it's a supposed farewell fight that's being promoted by Danny Garcia himself. You know,
I know.
Reportedly, he saved his money and he's well off, and he's had a lot of good paydays, a lot of, fights of high profile.
And he's invested his money well, Jack.
Yeah, good for him. Good for him. But I'm going to tell you this: he's going to win decisively, if not impressively. And if he doesn't look that good, but he wins decisively, maybe he gets a meaningful fight.
Because he has a name still. If he wins a fight and he looks good, he has a name.
Well, he lost Arizona Lara. I could see a keep busy fight against the Shakur Stevenson. And then Danny Garcia would say, okay, what the heck? I'm getting a few $100,000 for this fight to add to my retirement fund. I'll fight Shakur Stevenson. If I lose, okay, so be it. I think he's at that point now. But Danny Garcia, Hall of Famer now.
Wow.
He doesn't have the feel of a Hall of Famer, but if you look,
he has some good names on his resume, though.
Khan, big win over Mir Khan.
Yes, I think he might make it, Jack. I think he might make it. I'm not sure he's a Hall of Fame fighter, but I think he might make it. Joe says no, and Joe's is in tune with the Philly guys. And Joe, you're right. He has some businesses in Philly. He has invested well. And the nice thing about that fight, Jack, I just looked while you were speaking. I put my post-fight post on the Boots fight at exactly 11 o'clock, which means that fight started about 10 of 11. I can live with that. The Crawford fight didn't start till 10 of 1. Yeah, that makes it tough.
Yeah, 10 to 11. As long as they're starting the main event before 11. But it's so unpredictable. I was at the Barclays Center once. Man, it was a Deontay Wilder main event. It started 12:18 p.m. But there was one fight on one show. Shawnee Monahan, okay? He was a big attraction in New York, and he spoke at a boxing function that I had him at. So I wanted to watch his fight for personal reasons as well. And I kept waiting. Finally, I left at 1:06 in the morning, and his fight wasn't even on. His was the next fight. I couldn't take it anymore. And I spoke to him later, and I said, Shawnee, aren't you starving? Aren't you dozing off at that point? That's insane. You might be fighting at 2 a.m. That's insane.
The adrenaline keeps them going, I'm sure. There's no doubt about that. But but Jack, that's another issue. Now, I guess, look, it's never going to change and go back. And eventually guys like you and me are going to be gone. And somebody else will be doing this who's in their 30s or 40s. And they'll be more in tune and they'll have all the streams and remember all the passwords and how to hook things up. And that's just the way it's going to go. It seems to me, though, with technology, the more they try to make it easy, the more difficult it is. At least for me.
Yeah, I mean, there's some other interesting fights coming up. There's Chris Eubank against Conor Benn, the rematch. The first fight, that might wind up being voted as the fight of the year. I mean, both of them laid it all on the line. Tremendous fight where Eubank won a decision. Eubank is the much bigger man. That's not changing. There's a little bit of a subplot there. I think I maybe mentioned it last week. I vaguely remember. Eubank is trained by Bomac.
Bomac, right.
And give Bomac a ton of credit. He's done a heck of a job with Chris Eubank. Eubank is calling out after he beats Ben. He wants to fight Crawford or Canelo. Now, Crawford is Bomac's guy. Yeah,
that's never going to happen. Jack, that fight's not until November 15th, though.
Yeah, and that's in England. That's big. The first fight was great, but I would think that Eubank is going to repeat his victory. Bigger guy. I don't see what more Ben can do.
I don't see Ben having a chance. I didn't think he was going to win the last time, and I don't think he wins this time.
I mean, I have a feeling that Eubank might actually stop him at this time because at the end of the fight, he was really gassed, Ben, and Eubank was landing big blows. I'm going to tell you one fight that I'm changing my prediction on, Frank. I mentioned it to you a while ago when Brian Norman and the Devin Haney fight, when it was first made a couple of months ago. I said, yeah, I think Norman's going to win. I've changed my tune. I'm going to go with Haney in that fight. I know Norman knocked out the Japanese fight he fought in his last fight cold, and that it was highlight reel stuff, but I'm not sold on Brian Norman. Brian Norman is no more than a very good fighter to me, and he is a very good fighter. But Devin Haney, even the remnants of Devin Haney that are left, I think is better than Brian Norman. Plus, Haney he's bound to fight a smart fight, box him the whole way, and maybe Haney's not going to be the generational talent that I thought he was originally. And even though technically he's unbeaten because they reversed the Ryan Garcia decision, I mean, Haney, I just think he's better.
We can disagree on that one, Jack, because I think Brian Norman is a really good puncher. I think he's a little bit better than people give him credit for being. And I think the fact that Haney's going to have the ghost in his mind from getting dropped by Garcia, I think that Norman's going to win that fight. And right now, I think he'll actually look impressive doing it. But I don't see any case for Haney.
Well, you see no case. I wouldn't be that dismissive, Frank. It's okay you pick Norman, but to be that dismissive.
I mean, could Haney possibly outbox him and win a decision?
Well, listen,
if Haney does that, Jack, Brian Norman is nowhere as good as I thought.
Listen, I gotta give you credit. The last time it was as dismissive, it was a Daniel Dubois fight against
Usyk.
Against Alexander Usyk, and I picked Usyk to win. But I did regard Dubois as a legitimate threat to beat him, even though I was picking Usyk. You didn't regard Dubois as any type of threat at all.
I didn't think he'd do as good as he did the first time.
Yeah, and it kind of played out that way. So sometimes in rematches, you think one guy is going to build on something and be better. It actually goes in reverse. He doesn't.
Sometimes most of the time it's a rerun.
Yeah, and sometimes the guy fought his best possible fight the first fight. And
I think Dubois lost his shot, Jack, when that body shot was ruled a low blow. And I think he saw when Usyk got 5 minutes, I saw the wind go completely out of his sail. And he said to himself, oh, damn. He goes, that was my shot to win. Now it's gone. I'm not going to win. And I just, and the 3 fights he won in between didn't show me anything to think that he could be better and beat Usyk.
Frank, we can argue, but I felt it was a low blow, a legitimate low blow, and was ruled correctly by the ref. But if you feel it was a legitimate body shot that dropped Usyk, I feel Usyk gets up on time and just, survives the round or whatever.
That's how I feel. I thought it was a body shot, but I thought Usyk, if he had to get up and continue, I think he could have.
Yeah, so I think, the boy.
He did the smart thing, Jack.
And there was another fight I saw this weekend. Let me I have a hard time pronouncing the name, so give me a second. With David Allen lost his fight. So let me just get 1 second here. Why isn't this coming on? Here it goes. Wait 1 second. Oh, man. What am I missing? On Salenbeck, Muda. I don't know why. I wouldn't be good on the. Yeah, I'd be good because I practiced the name. I'd say 2,000 times, so I had it perfect. Well, he won a decision over Dave Allen, who's a good local fight in England. He beat him in England where it took place. Dave Allen beat Johnny Fisher, who Eddie Hearn's Matchroom had been building up big. Johnny Fisher won a controversial decision over Dave Allen, and they matched him again. And the plan was for Johnny Fisher to win the rematch decisively over Dave Allen. And the hype of Johnny Fisher would continue. But Dave Allen surprised us. He went against what we just talked about a moment ago. He reversed things in the rematch. He stopped Johnny Fisher. But he fought. But after Makhmudov beat Allen by a wide decision last Saturday, he called out Anthony Joshua. He made it a point. It was a Matchroom show, and Joshua supposedly responded. Now, Joshua's skill level is miles above Makhmudov. So you'd think he would win that fight, Joshua, and then go into a major fight after. But this guy, Makhmudov, despite it going the distance, he can punch. He can punch, and I don't trust Anthony Joshua's punch resistance against anyone.
It's amazing, Jack, how they look at Joshua now as easy pickings, and all you got to do is touch him. I know I can't say his name, Jack. How do you say his name? Makhmudov. I saw the fight. I saw clips of it. I agree he can punch, but the only thing I will say on the other side is I've seen him hurt, and Anthony Joshua can punch, and he's a big target. But it all depends to me on how Anthony Joshua comes out. If he comes out with trepidation and fights a safety first fight, he has a good shot to lose. If he comes out like he did against the MMA guy fought, how do you say his name?
Francis Ngannou.
If he comes out like that and he's confident and he lets his hands go, then I think he'll be okay. But it is funny how they look at Joshua now as that's the big name that I can get on my record and build on.
You know what disgusts me about the sport? You can lose a big fight, do nothing for years, not have one meaningful victory for years. They get you a soft fight, you win it, and now there's a feeling of entitlement.
You're back in.
There's a feeling of entitlement.
That's the era we live in, Jack. You're right. Especially at heavyweight.
Yeah, Tyson Fury, he knows he could get a big fight whenever he wants. He could fight Anthony Joshua in a major fight for millions and millions. And what is?
Do you think he ever fights again?
Yeah,
I do too.
Money, it would be against Anthony Joshua. The problem with making that fight is going to be in the negotiation. Tyson Fury is going to definitely want a lot more money. He shouldn't get more money than Anthony Joshua. It should be 50-50 at this point. I mean, he's not the champion.
that is going to make it difficult, Jack, because they're both going to want the lion's share. They both think they're the draw.
Now,
But I disagree with you on one point. I don't think that Josh was the only opponent. I could see Fury
yeah,
taking a fight with someone else.
I just want to comment the last remark in the fight that was made here. CES Boxing, Jimmy Birchfield is a promoter, really good promoter. You know, he promotes in the Connecticut area, you know, New England and New Orleans. Really good promoter. His name slips under the radar. And pullouts of fights, I mean, that's the one job I wouldn't want to have in boxing, Frank. I wouldn't want to be a matchmaker. I mean, because, you know, guys pull out of fights. It's on to the guy who actually goes through with the fight, because sometimes you prepare for a certain style, and then you get a guy who's the exact opposite what you prepared for. You could prepare for a guy who, you know, is moving, and you're working on cutting off the ring, and now the new guy that gets coming right to you. It's always like an unpredictable situation when there's a pullout and someone else is.
But the guys at that level, Jack, don't have a lot of options, and they don't have a lot of choices. No. You know that as well as I do.
Yeah, exactly. Oh, who we had as a guest, Patty Donovan, who lost to Louis Cracker. You know, close decision, somewhat debatable. Through the work of his manager Keith Sullivan, worked hard, petitioned the IBF. They keeping Donovan and the number 3 position, the IBF. So he's going to fight an eliminator against Liam Paro. Okay, Liam Paro, who is just a belt holder, and the winner of that fight will be in line to fight Cracker, unless someone else beats Cracker, you know, later on. But that's a legitimate eliminator. I'm not against, you know, ordered fights eliminators to see who gets a shot at the title, especially if it's quality fighters, and it makes for a very good fight in eliminator where guy has to earn it. I mean, I'm good with that.
I don't have a problem with that either, Jack. I think it makes for good fights. Look, what was the biggest eliminator fight of our time was probably Jimmy Young and Ken Norton. They fought each other. They fought so they could fight Ali. The winner would fight Ali, because Ali said, "I'm not going to fight them both."
Yeah, at that point, you know, I was thinking of writing a story. I'm actually going to do it.
Jack, I can't hear what you're saying. Jack, you faded out. Start over. I didn't hear what you said.
Do you hear me now? Okay.
Yes.
Virtually
at that point,
virtually every fighter in boxing history at one point or another ducks someone at some point in his career. Maybe it's a legitimate reason in a sense, but they all kind of do it. You name a fighter, and I could usually tell you one guy he ducked. The case of Ali at the end of his career, yes, he ducked the 4th fight with Norton. So there you go. I mean, everyone has ducked a fight at one, nearly everyone, I should say, is ducked an opponent at one time or another. You know, Roberto Duran, his management kind of ducked an immediate return with Ken Buchanan. They never had that return. You know, like it or not, that's the way it was. Listen, the great Marvin Hagler, I don't blame him, but he didn't duck the fight with Michael Spinks. Now, that would have been a major payday. Had there been a very weak light heavyweight champion, yeah, he would have moved up and taken care of business. I'm not faulting Hagler. It's fine what he did. It's fine what he did. Roy Jones, for paranoid reasons, ducked Darius Mikuljeski.
But don't you think his reasons were legit, though? I mean, Jack, do you think? I think Hagler had trepidation and thought maybe he couldn't beat Spinks, and I think he's smart and he made the right decision.
Regardless of the reason, it's done. Lennox Lewis, the one guy who you could say never ducked anyone. He actually, and I don't blame him for this, it was a smart move. He ducked the rematch with Vitaly Klitschko and retired instead at that point. There's difference in ducks, Frank. Sometimes ducking a guy is flagrant. Sometimes we'll give the guy a pass for ducking someone. It's okay. You know, it's not because it doesn't make sense at that point.
Well, let me ask you this. Why does Klitschko or why does Lewis get a pass for ducking, supposedly not fighting a rematch with Klitschko, which again, I think he made the right decision, but Ali fought Norton 3 times. Why is he, it sounds like you're holding that against him a little bit more than Lewis.
A little more.
Why?
I'll tell you why. Because Lewis knew Lennox Lewis, he was tired of fighting. And had it been an easy opponent than Klitschko to have a rematch with, yeah, maybe he goes in and he just takes care of business in a farewell fight. But Ali continued to fight. It's not like Ali retired rather than face Norton a 4th time. He fought there. Look at the guys he fought after that. He fought Ernie Shavers. Who else did he fight after that?
Evangelista.
Evangelista. Sting.
Those were the 2. No, wait a second. No, wait.
But he didn't.
Wait, Jack. Wait.
Maybe not Evangelista at that point. I forgot.
He fought Norton the 3rd time in September of 76. Okay. He fought Evangelista, I believe, in January of 77. In September of 77, he fought Shavers. And in November of 77, Young and Norton fought. He said he would fight the winner. He sat ringside for the fight. He was cheering Jimmy Young on. And then after that fight, he said he took the tune-up with Spinks, and then he'd fight the winner of that fight because he signed a contract that if he beat Spinks, he'd have to fight Norton, and he lost to Spinks. And
then
Spinks,
he got the 4th fight with Norton. I mean, come on. You know the story of him calling Foreman up. It's no secret. He wanted Foreman to fight Norton, to take care of Norton for him, move him out of the way, and then he'd fight Foreman. I kind of want to, let's say that it happened, hypothetically. Let's make believe a moment, Frank, that Norton went through the Foreman fight. Foreman would have stopped Norton again. We both agree on that. Does Ali fight Foreman, keep his word, and does he beat Foreman?
all right, now let's get the chronology right. When does Norton and Foreman fight? After Norton beats Young?
When did Ali ask him to fight? When did Ali ask Foreman to fight Norton? That's the good question.
I'm not sure of that, Jack, but I'm thinking if that happened, and I never knew that until I saw it in the movie, to be honest. So I'm not even sure that's the case, but let's just say it was. You would have to think that it would have been after Norton got the decision over Jimmy Young. Because what happened was Young beat Foreman to get the Norton fight. That's right. So in 77, Norton beats Young, and Ali fights 4 months later against Spinks, knowing that if he beats Spinks, he would have to fight Norton. So if it happened, it had to be between November of 77 and say January of 78.
Well, regardless, if he fought Foreman again, it would be in the later 1970s. My feeling is
it would have been in 78. It would have been 78.
Yeah, about the time he beat Spinks. You want to know something? Man, I'm not sure Ali would have beaten Foreman.
Here's the fight, Jack. Foreman, who lost to Jimmy Young, versus Ali. You could say who lost or beat Spinks. But it would have been at that time. That's a tough call.
Ali would have been in much better shape. But then again, would he have been, Frank, would Ali have been in much better shape than the Spinks rematch? Because at that point,
I don't think he could get in better shape.
Yeah, so would that be good enough what he did in the Spinks rematch to beat a George Foreman? And could that version of Ali rope-a-doped? Could he have? I don't.
The only thing, Jack,
the whole way, yeah.
I thought about that a lot. And here's the conundrum. The Foreman who fought Jimmy Young, who walked around looking for one punch and was more of a counter puncher than an attacker, Ali actually matches up better with that Foreman. Because if Foreman's not going after him, Ali holds all the advantages. So I don't know. If Foreman came out like he did earlier in his career, he probably beats Ali. But if it's the Gil Clancy version of Foreman that has him concerned about his stamina and his head's a little messed up, I don't know. That's a tough call. I mean, you just might have to go with Foreman because he just has so much more in the tank.
Yeah, I mean, it's tough according to the stage in his career. I don't know, Frank, whether you ever look at past fights on YouTube that you saw the first time and they look a little different. I want to throw a compliment to an all-time great middleweight, Carlos Monzon. I saw the end of his first fight against Emil Griffith, and I was
always showing up a lot.
Right. I was always under the impression that when the fight was stopped in the 14th round, Griffith kind of like leaned down, and it looked kind of a semi-concession way. The report was he had a pain shooting up his leg, a severe pain, a severe leg cramp. Monzon was brilliant in that round, hitting with all type of punches.
Monzon beat him up in that round.
Monzon beat him up in that round, exactly. Kind of overwhelmed him. And kudos to Griffith as an older fighter. He came back and gave Monzon all he could handle in the rematch.
A year later. Not even a full year later.
And some people think a past his peak Emil Griffith beat a prime Monzon. I don't think so. I think Monzon deserved the decision. But the idea that Griffith could run him that close, at that point.
Griffith fought an excellent fight. I remember watching that fight on TV as it happened back in 73. And Griffith was very aggressive, threw a lot of punches, and Monzon. But wasn't that right after Monzon was shot, Jack?
I know he had a domestic dispute, but
right.
He wasn't shot where it would have affected his ring, career, whatever. Maybe it grazed him, the bullet, or whatever. I don't know. It's funny that you mentioned, not funny, but it's ironic you mentioned that the one case we hear about a guy who got shot was Cleveland Williams, and then when Ali beats him, some people use it as an excuse. Well, Williams was shot, this and that. I don't go for all that. Like, even with the Errol Spence losing to Crawford, I don't want to hear, well, he was in an accident. He was thrown from the car. That took the fight out of him. He was beaten, battered. He was a shell of himself. Well, we talked about Danny Garcia earlier. Errol Spence decisively outpointed Danny Garcia.
And Porter.
Accident. Right, leading into the Crawford fight. So I don't want to hear that Errol Spence is a charity case, when Crawford beat him.
Jack, do you think Spence will ever fight again?
I hope not. Because
we'd have to assume that he's well off financially.
We do absolutely have to assume that. Where's he going to go? There was some talk about him fighting Jermell Charlo.
Right.
Jermell Charlo were from the same gym. They were stablemates. They're friends. Why? Charlo, it's a fight that would be interesting because, what do we call it? A crossroads fight? One of them would win and get his name back, and the other may as well stay retired. So it would be, so there's name value.
And you could make a case they're both damaged from Canelo and Crawford. Spence Crawford and Charlo Crawford. Canelo, he hasn't fought since then. He didn't take the beating that Spence took.
Yeah, at one point, the Charlo brothers were riding so high, they seemed that they looked on their way to Hall of Fame careers, both of them. And Jermell Charlo still hasn't lost, former middleweight champion. He still hasn't
I think they
lost.
couldn't handle. I think the success they achieved, Jack, I think that went to their heads a little bit. And I think they lost focus on what's important. I think they got the big house, the Ferraris, And I think they thought they arrived and took their eye off the ball a little bit. I don't know that to be true. That's just my assumption from what I've seen, heard, read, and just a little instinct.
Yeah, you kind of wonder how fighters spend money. It's not for me to tell someone how to spend their money, but then again, I mean, Canelo Alvarez has made excessive wealth. Even though it's dumb for him to have something like 10, 12 cars there, like lined up in his garage, he could actually afford it. Okay. I would sit him down and tell him, how many cars do you need, guy? Get 4 cars maximum if you want.
That's what I like about Crawford, Jack. He doesn't do that.
Crawford said in an interview, he bought a whole block in Omaha, like all the houses on the block. And I'm thinking, and he says he paid for it with cash. Why does he need all those houses? I don't get this. You have to pay taxes. You have to pay utilities. You have to pay, fees.
But at least they're not going to depreciate like a car.
Yeah. But,
and if he maintains them, so they probably will. And maybe he took care of some family members and whatnot. That could be.
Look,
Bernard Hopkins was good with his money too. Isn't that? I love hearing, Jack. I love hearing those stories. And as you mentioned earlier, there are some guys that rip Lennox Lewis for never having a rematch with Vitaly Klitschko. I respect him completely.
I respect him too.
You know why, Jack? Because I think he knows that was probably the most ill-prepared he ever was for a fight, and he escaped with a win. And I think he realized at that point, to beat this guy, I don't have what it takes, and I can't put into it what it takes to give myself the best chance to beat him. Just like when Marciano went away for a couple of weeks to fight Johansson, and then he says, I can't do it. I'm cutting corners like I never did before. It's just not there. I respect Lewis for walking away with his health, his wealth, and his respect.
And Lewis is one guy, and justifiably so, whose legacy grew in retirement. Some guys, their legacy goes backwards. When Lewis retired, people weren't talking about him as one of the greatest heavyweights of all time. And now he's on, a lot of lists. Anywhere 6 to 10 or whatever, but he's on a lot of lists. And if you look at the type of career Lewis had, he had a better career than, I guess, Joe Frazier, than George Foreman, career-wise. If we look at the cumulative amount of quality opponents he beat compared to the other guys, you could argue he had a better career. Not that I'm saying he was a greater fighter. Frazier obviously had a moment that was higher than anything that Lewis ever did. And you could say the same for Foreman, regaining the title at an old age the way he won it from Frazier. But Lewis had what's known as body of work, just a great body of work.
The further we get away from Lewis, the better he looks, because his resume is stacked with quality fighters. A lot of them were punchers, and he beat them mostly conclusively. He could box, he could punch. He's a very hard guy to match up with because, again, he can box, he can punch, he can go forward, he can back up. He's pretty versatile. So he looks better in the rearview mirror than he did when he first left. And I remember, I think I told you this, when I left the Holmes Ronaldo Snipes fight, if somebody would have said to me walking out that one day I'm going to think of Holmes as one of maybe the 4 or 5 greatest heavyweights ever, I would have said, you're crazy. Now I do. And I remember the night that McCall knocked out Lewis. If somebody would have said to me, one day you're going to look at him and you're going to have him in that 4 to 6, 7 range, I would have said, you're crazy. And here we are, both of those guys, as we get further away from the careers, the better they look.
Frank, we're saving the best for last on this show, the best as far as a boxing personality. who passed away recently. Maybe you want to, make a
Alex
statement about it.
Wallow, who was the color fight commentator with Dan Dierdorf on ABC. Jack, I liked Wallow. Wallow was the main voice after Cosell left, and he kind of picked it up after that. And I thought Alex Wallow had a very good boxing acumen. I liked the way he called fights. I never picked up that he was rooting for one guy or the other. I thought he was a good umpire, called it down the middle the way it should be, and I thought he had more than a clue as to what he was watching.
Oh, hey, and Alex Wallow, like you said, he described the fight so well. Case in point, when George Foreman fought Jerry Cooney,
I knew you were going to go there. Yep.
Yeah, and he mentioned something. Well, Foreman looks quicker than usual, not just in comparison to Cooney. And it got me to think, wow, George is looking quicker, because on my own, it may have entered my mind, yeah, of course he's going to look quick. He's in with Cooney, who's not quick. And he stated immediately it's not because of anything Cooney. It's not because Cooney isn't quick, but Foreman is showing more speed than before. Just that type of insight I enjoyed that Alex Wallow came up with. He was very close with Al Michaels. They were like best friends, and they did the Hagler-Hearns fight, as I recall, too. Wallow and Al Michaels for ABC.
I remember Michaels doing it. I forgot that Alex Wallow did that, but that would make sense, Jack, because that 88, 87, that's when he came on.
Yeah,
he also trained Jim Lampley on how to call fights.
Yeah. So
I just read.
Yeah, I mean, just excellent, excellent broadcaster, good personality. And he was an inspiration, too. He survived stage 4 throat cancer in 1980.
For 30 years.
1980? And he lived, 45 more years or something.
I think it was the late 80s, Jack.
Late 80s. I'm sorry, closer to,
right.
Late 80s, and he lived
a little over 35 years.
Yeah. I mean, surviving that. I mean, it's and especially someone who needed his voice, and to survive that and still come back with a strong voice.
Jack, on a personal level, it stands out even more to me because, we talk about cancer and it's just everybody, you just talk about it, but until it affects you or it's touched your life with somebody close to you, it really does make a difference. And then when you hear about somebody like Alex Wallow and the fact that it was stage 4 and he dealt with it that long, it's like it just puts it in an entirely different perspective.
Well, and there's also what's going on now. There's this trainer in England, Joe Gallagher, who's trained a lot of good fighters. Stage 4, and he's coming back. He's still training guys, going to the gym, riding, and he seems to be in remission, he says. So there are inspiring stories, out there, which, hopefully they give people hope, who and
I had forgotten about Alex Wallow for a while too. In fact, if you would have asked me 2 weeks ago whether he was still with us or not, I wasn't sure.
Yeah, well, it gets to the point where guys do retire, and then you kind of wonder what's going on. Their name is out of the news. Listen, a famous name is out of the news, and we only have about a minute. Like a guy like a George Chuvalo, he's still around, but no one's talking about him.
I read that he's in a home, Jack, but he's almost 90 years old. Is that amazing?
Yeah. Okay, Frank. I mean, good show here that we had, and we'll see what activity takes place, what boxing announcements are going through the week. But it's always great to talk boxing. Boxing along with baseball are the two sports with an amazing tradition.
Yeah, how about the Jets, Jack? Are they going to win a game this year?
Oh, they'll win a few games, but it won't mean anything in the long run.
Let me ask you this. I like Aaron Glenn. What's the talk in New York about him? Because he's better than an 0-6 coach.
People are unhappy, but they understand It's his first year. It would be unfair to fire him. He's safe for this year. He's going to play the year out. And then what are the Jets going to do? The onus is more on Justin Fields, the quarterback, than Aaron Glenn at this moment.
Does Mike McDaniel make it through the year?
I don't know how close he is with the owner. I don't know at all. It doesn't look good. If push comes to shove, I'd say yes, though. He does make it through the year.
Okay. As long as the Dolphins don't fire him and hire Rex Ryan, which you're talking about. Thanks
Oh,
for
man.
watching, everybody. We'll see you next week.